Hello and welcome to the OutFronts Love Victor panel presented by OutFest. I am Monica Trasandes, Director of Spanish Language and Latinx Media at GLAAD. I'm also from Uruguay. I'm an immigrant who came to the U.S. at the age of 6. Para todas las personas que hablan español, les doy una bienvenida de corazón. When I was growing up, I rarely ever saw myself represented in film or television. When I did see gay characters, they were always men. There were never lesbian women, no transgender people, no bisexual people. And when they were there, they were usually the butt of jokes, the outsider, or just the best friend with not a whole lot to do. They were certainly not the lead character, which is what is one of the things that is so amazing about Love Victor. Lack of representation makes you feel invisible, but representation makes you feel visible, like you belong in the culture, and that's an amazing feeling. So I'm very, very happy to be here today and to be chatting with the cast and producer and showrunner of Love Victor. So today we are going to have with us Michael Cimino, James Martinez, Ana Ortiz, George Sear, and producer and writer Marcos Luevanos, and showrunner Brian Tanen. Hello, everyone.
Oh, hey.
So great to be with all of you. Thank you for being part of OutFest.
Thank you so much for having us. Well, we said that at the same time, George.
I would love to start with a question for Michael and George. How is it making this amazing show together? Do you hear from LGBTQ youth who are struggling to come out? Maybe Michael first, or both of you, whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, making this show is honestly such a pleasure and such an honor. Like we've heard from, I mean, at least I've heard, I know George heard from people as well, but I'll let him speak to his own experience. But yeah, like I've heard from so many people and it was like such an incredible like experience, just like kind of hear their stories and hear how they relate to Victor and what has happened throughout Victor's first season experience. And I can't wait to see how people relate to the second season. And that's definitely a testament to Brian and Marcos and the rest of the team on Love Victor for writing an incredible story that is super relatable.
Yeah, I think the show has such a like optimistic message for LGBTQ youth, you know, like, yes, like this second season is presenting the kind of difficult realities of Victor coming out in today's age in high school. But ultimately, it's really about him celebrating who he is and embracing who he is, figuring that out and the joys of living your truth. So I think really that's why it's connected to people on such a great level, because it's really optimistic, you know? So yeah, it's been amazing to hear from people who've connected to it.
It does an amazing job, I think, of combining humor with very real things, real issues. That it's refreshing to see issues like this talked about, not just coming out and family acceptance, which is hugely important in the Latinx community. And I'm going to do my little commercial right here up front. You know, people who have acceptance from their families, from their parents, from any family member, do much better in life. It's just you're much healthier and happier when you have family acceptance. So I love any show that helps parents go in that direction or families go in that direction. So I'd love to actually ask Ana a little bit about playing a mom who obviously loves her son, but at the end of last season, it was left as if she may not be so comfortable. When Victor comes out to her, she says, you know, basically like, let's talk about it later. Clearly not that comfortable. How are you working on that character? Because she's very different from other moms you've played, like Hilda in GLAAD. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience for you?
Yeah, it was, I think as an actor, it's sort of everything you want. It's everything you look for. When Brian first spoke to me about the part, we go back a long way. In fact, Brian worked on Ugly Betty. So I've known Brian since we were both babies. He knows what I'm capable of, and he really knows what I think he knows from that sort of scene, which I don't. I grew up in New York. I've always been an ally. I was raised an ally. Hilda was very comfortable for me to play, very sort of like really kind of part of me and part of who, like my family. And Marcos and Brian and this writing team, when they approached it, was like, well, she's complicated. And it's sort of the flip side of Hilda, right? Because she's she's ferociously protective of her son and loves her family more than anything, but she's really flawed and really struggling with her sort of relationship with God and her relationship with the family and how those two can reconcile. And it was just so sort of eye-opening for me because, you know, usually you judge that kind of person, right? You're like, ugh, they're so closed-minded, but to have to really get into her and really figure her out and see where her love was and her struggle was. And it was just such a juicy, wonderful, exciting role to play because I get to work with this incredible cast. I mean, James is just one of my favorite people in the world, and to work with him and to sort of spar with him is so exciting. And Michael is just this sort of like wonderkind, incredible, like heart with feet who just walks around like and completely ready to just like dive in. And then I get to like fight with George and really sort of, Isabel really got to sort of like, you know, come to life. So this season has, you know, it's just sort of taken what happened last season and really expanded on it and discussed it. And I hope that people who watch it can sort of now, you know, and people like Isabel who can sort of say like, oh my God, that is me and that is our family. And, you know, this is a way to approach it. And there is a way to sort of like navigate this. That was long, but you get it.
Well, that's the thing is that it's complicated for people, right? They're not just one thing. There can be people of faith and also be very accepting of their family members, but it can be a struggle to get there. And she's very obviously has made some mistakes. And I think that's really refreshing and cool too, to have a mom who's cheated. Yeah. And, you know, and everyone's dealing with it openly. And I think that's really interesting. And James, so I would love to ask you a little bit about the dad. I mean, I feel a lot of times for Latino dads in the real world, right? Because they get an earful. They get a lot. I hear it. I've seen it. I've heard it. You know, My own dad has told me about it. And, you know, they're told a lot of times, hey, if you were a different father, or mothers get it too, but hey, if, you know, my kid would not turn out gay, as if parents can make a kid straight or gay or they cannot. For anybody, obviously you're watching OutFest, you probably already know that, but just anybody wonders it. But James, how did you prepare for that? Because you really play, I mean, it's really layered. You're supporting, but you're also uncertain. You're uncertain how to deal with what happened with your wife. It's just a very layered, tell us about your research, tell us about the role, tell us about anything you want to talk about.
Okay. I was just so pleasantly surprised by the second season when I started reading the script and how they just flipped that stigma on the Latin man, you know? It's just, it connected to me on a very personal level because I'm noticing this pattern just in the past couple of generations where it's just not working. You know, whatever is traditional, whatever the traditional expectations are creating a lot of tension and a lot of isolation among families. And it's happened to me on a personal level. So research for me was just my background, and I was surrounded by research material, unfortunately, because to see how certain relatives have really missed out on getting to know my LGBTQ relatives has really been very saddening. And it's been illuminated a lot by just doing and working on this show. So I think for Armando in particular, I think for me, in my mind, he's in a very particular, in a very similar situation as I am. So this is a pattern that he just wants to break.
When people say, well, you can be who you are, but I don't talk about it. Don't. I mean, like, what kind of Latinos don't talk about who they're dating or their lives? Yeah. Right? Okay, I'll just be the silent one over in the corner while you barbecue. Like, I'll be just standing here with no one with me. I won't bring anyone to the party. I mean, you know, like I see that too. I see it changing. A lot of families saying, look, family first, right? Mm-hmm. Maneuvering like the different issues, like respect is a hugely important Latinx, value, respect for family, being against discrimination. All those things we see a lot of times are at play when we see increasing support of LGBTQ families of people accepting the LGBTQ members. They say, because I love my family and respect is important to me and I don't want to discriminate. So it's cool to see that play out, you know, and
learn from our mistakes is basically what's happening here nowadays. Hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. It's changing. It's definitely changing, but I would love to ask for you guys, for Brian, what is it like to be creating a show that for a lot of people, I think will be maybe the first time where they see themselves seen, you know, because a lot of times we at GLAAD will say, what is the first time you saw yourself seen in a TV show or a film? And for a lot of young Latinx and queer people in our society, in this country and in the rest of the world too, because that's what makes me so excited too, is that Love, Victor will be watched by people in Latin America, Mexico, Central America, everywhere, which is awesome. So how does it feel for you, Brian, and for Marcos too, to sort of be bringing these stories to life and knowing that the impact it has?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. You know, when I first met Isaac and Elizabeth, who are the creators of the show and who wrote the film Love, Simon, I had just come off another show. I was very exhausted. I was not really looking to jump right back into show running. But you know, this opportunity just felt like something that I did not want to pass up. In the cough number of years that I've been a writer and producer in Hollywood, I have never worked in a show that was centered on a gay character. You know, it's so rare to have a gay lead. So I think it's in some ways groundbreaking that this is an LGBT Latino character, but it's groundbreaking in a lot of ways. A young LGBT character, sort of centering things. One of the things I think most about this experience is, God, I wish there had been a show like this when I was the age of the characters here. It would have been so meaningful to me to see that experience represented on TV. And I think that's what you're saying about being seen. It's really uplifting and inspiring to see that on TV and feel less alone.
Marcos, how about for you?
Oh, yeah. No, I had a very similar experience as Brian. Like I'd been when I started on Love, Victor, I'd been working TV writer for a decade and never in a million years thought that I'd be writing on a gay show, let alone a gay Latinx show. And so it definitely was something that I felt like I just had to jump on and work on. And thankfully, they were willing to have me. And it's, I think it's super important. Like, I just think back to the characters that I saw on television where I saw myself represented, like Wilson Cruz in My So-Called Life, or like Mark Indelicato in Ugly Betty, where, it's a cliche, but you really, you can't be it if you can't see it. And so definitely seeing that character on Ugly Betty and then doing the research and, finding out that it was created by a gay Latinx man, Silvio Horta, which, who Brian and Anna both, worked with and were very close with. So that was something that was inspiring to me growing up and made me realize, like, oh, this is something that I could potentially do because this person did it before me and did it successfully and did it so well, in protecting this image of this family on that show he created.
That was such an important show. For Michael and George, have you, I think I read an interview somewhere where you said, Michael, you had gotten a little bit of hate comments, or a little bit of on social media, a little bit of homophobic. You heard a little bit of homophobic stuff, not to focus on the negative, but how do you deal with that? It's the same for you too, George, if you've gotten any.
To be honest, most of the time I just kind of approach it from like the point of view where it's like they're not past that point of like trying to push past their preconceived notions or like, their pre-programming from what they're told as children. So I'm just like, you're just being ignorant. And that's just kind of the way I approach it most of the time. But other than that, yeah, I usually just try to either ignore it or just like take note of like what the LGBT community has to go through like on a day-to-day just to exist. So yeah.
Yeah, same for me. You know, it's just like ignoring the sort of negativity, and there's so much more like overwhelmingly positive messages anyway that come through. So as soon as you start reading that and realizing like the impact that these characters are having, and that people are like, you know, like connecting to the show on that way, then all that negativity doesn't really, it just sort of fades away. Like for me, at least, that's how I look at it.
These kids nowadays are so good at taking the higher road. Like, you know, I'm really proud of these guys, really, just for being stand up. It's great, because I don't know how I would have handled something like this or a role like this at your age. So kudos.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Agree. I've been like GLAAD long enough to read a lot of interviews about people who are playing characters who are LGBT or Q, and saying, oh, wow, it was such a stretch, or it was so hard, the kissing was so hard. And I've read enough or seen enough videos where you talk about how natural it is, which is fantastic. It's right, it's how it should be, but it's just beautiful too to see that, because that's also the interviews that people look out where you are talking about your characters. That's hugely impactful to people.
Yeah. Always felt like that though, hasn't it? It's always just felt quite natural, really. And I think like even from the chemistry read, there was just this sort of energy there that was, you know, I don't know. And hopefully that's just been able to evolve and grow the way the characters have too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that like, you know, it's always kind of been really like easy for George and I. We even this season, obviously it's not really a secret, it was in the trailer, but this season that we have like some sex scenes and stuff like that. We actually opted out of using like an intimacy coach because we just wanted to feel like natural and like new and exciting. And, you know, and I feel like we just didn't really want to rehearse it, like over rehearse it or anything. We just wanted to feel like
in that moment together without like sort of a third party coming in, because we felt like we had something that we knew we wanted to, you know. But we were grateful that we got offered the intimacy.
Yes, of course. Yes.
That would be a helpful thing. I don't want to like completely like,
no, yeah, like it was obviously like such a nice thing of them to offer that, but like George and I were just like, yeah, no, it's like we're good.
We kind of just both looked at each other like, no, I think we're all right actually.
Yeah.
I was sort of laughing to myself on set because, you know, this was a year where we made the show during COVID. And I think a lot of people, especially single people in their lives, were being really careful about like kissing other people or whatever. And these two are like making out on set every day. Just like with going for it all the time.
Mouthwash to protect.
Yeah, with the mouthwash.
So these two had their own sort of like kissing bubble for COVID, and they really were game for it. They really just went for it. And as you can see on screen, they look like a couple with chemistry.
Oh, over what time period did you film?
It was a bit of an extended filming. Things go a little bit slower during COVID. So I think we started in November and wrapped, was it end of February, something like that? And the break over Christmas was extended this year because we were in the middle of that COVID surge, and out of abundance of caution, there was more time off than normally would be for the holidays. But yeah, that was the filming, and the writing was in the months prior to that.
No, I see. George, are you back in England now, or where are you now?
I'm in LA still. I live here now. This is kind of like home for me. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I am curious.
A half.
Sorry.
I haven't been back in like a year and a half. So.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Yeah.
How do you prepare as a Brit? How do you prepare for doing an American accent?
It's a lot of practice, and just like if you're ordering a coffee or in an Uber or whatever, you just do the accent there and see if you can sort of fool people with it, really. And
my favorite thing is going out with George and having him order an American accent. It's so funny.
It's now like sometimes second nature. I kind of forget I'm doing it. But it did take a minute to like get that confidence with it. But yeah, I want it to feel second nature though, so.
He does it all the time. It's so great.
For Anna and James, have you heard a lot from community members about either about playing Latinx characters or about playing the parents of a gay kid? Have you do you hear a lot from fans?
Well, as far as community members and people from my community and friends and family, I got to say it's a little sad for me. It's kind of a heavy question because, you know, a lot of the people in my life that I know support my career and support the work that I do. You know, I'm not going to lie. It's been this eerie silence about this show. You know, but that to me is all the more reason to do the show and really emphasizes how important the show is. I keep putting the show out there. I keep shoving it in their faces. I don't care how they feel about it. And hopefully, you know, I know they love me and they want to support me and they know what I've been through as an actor and they love me. So I know that they are going to watch the show. And if they watch it, hopefully they'll sit down and listen. But this show is something that shouldn't be for the people that, of course, I love that people can relate to it and that it speaks to them, but it's also for those that watch it and feel uncomfortable. You know, that's where the work is. And that's where really the boundaries are pushed. So I'm okay with that. And, you know, it just emphasizes how important this work is. So I'm okay with that.
It's interesting, James. I didn't know that you had some of that reaction. And it's interesting to me to hear, because one of the things we try to do as we write the show is not demonize or villainize people who aren't fully there on the journey yet of acceptance. So, you know, I think in 2021, on television, if the parents don't immediately hug their kid and say like, oh, you're gay, we already knew, you know, like if it's not, you would tend to think of like, oh, we don't like these people. And that's not what we did on this show. We gave them a complicated journey, but we tried to do it in such a way that it was nuanced. We understood where they were coming from, that their lack of acceptance was not a lack of love. It was just a little bit of a lack of understanding, and we let them go on their journey. And I think that's true to life. I think not everyone is there on their journey of acceptance, but things like PFLAG, which is a storyline we did this season, that's an organization for people who are working through their feelings about having family members who are LGBTQ plus. And that's sort of what's happening for our mom and dad characters on this season is they are learning and evolving and growing. And I agree. I think it's something that helps our audience go on that journey too.
I just need to get them to press play and listen.
Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%. I think that like that is something that, especially this season that we talk like that you guys as writers, like tackled so masterfully, where it's like it offers both perspectives, where kids that do have parents that aren't maybe necessarily the most accepting of who they are, it can give them that hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that sometimes parents just need time to work through that pre-programming that they already have.
Say we were all raised in a homophobic, transphobic, racist world as well. And there's a lot of work for everyone to undo. And, you know, a lot of times it takes the kid who's a lesbian or gay years to come out. It took me years to come out. But when I told my parents, I expected them to be like, awesome, great. And it's like, no, it's going to take them a little while. If it took me like 8 years or something like that to get used to the idea, it's going to take them a minute too, you know? Anna, how about you? Have you heard from people in the community about being a mom of a gay kid, and also about the affair? Do you get an earful about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as far as my family goes, and even my extended family. My experience they're obsessed. They love it. They can't get enough of it. It's their favorite show. They want it to run for 100 years. And I don't know. So I've been really lucky in that aspect with my family. And my friends, I think, but I've heard most from kids is who maybe had sort of the same experience that you did, Monica, is that for them, watching the show was a way to start the dialogue. Like they were like, this is finally something that everybody can watch together, and there's something for everybody. And I can sort of, now I have a way to approach this conversation because the mother is complicated, and she is sort of, you know, like it's not so one-sided is the wrong word, but there's someone there who's representing what they feel their mom is, you know, and because these writers are so flippin' great, and like Brian said, the nuance of it all, you know, and that's what really appealed to me when he talked to me about Isabel in the first place. A lot of times, you know, you're the mom who's either like, amazing, I'm so happy, or else you're like, you guys. So it was so nice to be able to really have her fully complicated and you know, complicated and flawed. So I would say that, you know, on the one side, whereas my family and friends have been super, they love it. I've been hearing just mostly from fans who are like, thanks to you guys, because this is sort of like the way I can open the door into having this conversation. And usually they're really young, you know, 16, 17 years old. So it's kind of awesome that this show is here for that in that way.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I love that it's also, you know, like I said earlier, it looks at some serious issues and some real issues. Like, you know, your character is real. You said she has a real life, and yours too. You know, James, with like they're going through something that a lot of people are going through, separations and, you know, relationship challenges. As you know, we love to be entertained, but as viewers, as human beings, we also kind of need a guide in life. And it's cool to see characters who are different, familiar, but different in the way they're handling things. And it just feels great to have, you know, the laughter and the fun, but also the serious stuff that helps you grow as a person, which is you want to be entertained, but you also want to feel full after you watch something.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask Brian and Marcos, what are the sort of the best parts and the most challenging parts for you of storytelling? And I would love then later to hear from like James, George, Anna, and Michael, either what you have loved about your character, what surprised you about your character, or what you would love to see your character do in the next seasons. And or I would love to know what you'd love to play, what other roles you'd love to play. That's 4 questions. I'll come back to all those 4 questions. Just be thinking about it. But Brian,
yeah.
You can answer any of those 14 questions, any of those.
I would jump in with like the most challenging part of this season was making a television show during a global pandemic. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, but I would say to anyone who's watching TV right now, any show you're watching right now was filmed during this time, which meant that everyone working on it was taking a calculated risk to do this, to put that entertainment out there, to keep their jobs, to work. It was really a Herculean effort like nothing I've ever seen before. The actors had to work without any kind of protection. They were not able to wear masks because they're on camera. And because they're not protected, it meant that everyone who was around them within, 6, 12 feet in the same room as them, whatever, had to be tested as they did, had to be tested regularly, either, every other day, or twice a week if they were a little bit further away from the actors. The actors were wearing these shields during rehearsals. Everyone else was wearing masks and shields. If somebody did test positive, quarantine and contact tracing would immediately go into effect. It was this utterly bizarre experience of making television during a time where you just had to take all these safety precautions, and the scheduling of things was different. The number of extras you could have in a scene was different. So I really, my hat goes off to anyone who was making TV in a time like this for our show, because it was about teen relationships, because it's set in a high school. There's so many scenes where there's characters kissing and big groups of extras. And we wanted the show to feel the same. So, we tried to do our best to do that under incredibly difficult circumstances. And I will say, like, everyone had a really good attitude towards it. And that was the saving grace, was that we have such a beautifully optimistic and wonderful cast and crew. It could have been disastrously unpleasant, because it's so hard to make TV this way. It truly is difficult. But everyone was so nice and understanding. It really was it felt like an experience where everyone came together and made it work. Which is a long way of saying, like, because you asked about process, like, what's the hardest part of the storytelling? The storytelling on this show is really cathartic and exciting and wonderful to do. I never worked on a show like this before. It's about characters that are, interesting to me, that I would have loved to have had on TV when I was that age. This season for me was especially exciting, because season 1 was a story about being in the closet, essentially. And season 2 is about, like, the first everything that happens next, first relationships, first sexual experiences, all these things that you normally see in a teen drama, but told through an LGBT lens. So that to me was just, like, super exciting. And the coming out journey, we kind of dumped on the parents. It was like, he was past that. He moved on. He got through it. He's now living his life and having this hot teenage relationship, and mom and dad are, like, left holding the bag of, like, oh, we didn't know this, and now we have to catch up. So that to me felt really real and really exciting as a way to go for season 2. I don't know, Marcos, did you agree it was a little more fun to write the out character in season 2?
Totally. Yeah, it was definitely, like, something that I know, like, we would joke a lot about, and when we were writing season 1, like, we want to write on, like, on season 2, because then he'll be, this out character who's, able to, actually be gay in public, with his boyfriend, with his love interest. And, something we did, like, consciously was, in the first season, there's traditionally, like, and obviously, like, everyone doesn't go through this, but traditionally there's, like, 6 steps, 6 stages of coming out. And so we did the first 3 in season 1. And so season 2 was exploring those, the second 3, which was, I think a really exciting thing, to, again, be able to just depict him as being, out in high school and holding Benji's hand, and these things that, again, like, seem like very commonplace things, but for, a teenager in America, still, even in 2021, in a lot of parts of the country, that's still a very big, shocking, exciting, scary, just all of the emotions type of thing that, I think is still something that a lot of people, want to watch. And I know for myself, like, really wanted to write.
Yeah, you did a great job of that, because the fun definitely comes through and the joy comes through. And that's, OutFest is about celebrating being out and seeing ourselves in that joyous context. Of course, there are struggles too, but when you first come out, it's joyful. You're finally out. There's that boom, that celebration of falling in love. And so the congratulations with bringing, the little bit of challenges, putting it on the poor parents, but letting the kids have fun, and have a sexy experience with each other.
Yeah, thank you.
So for Michael and George, what has surprised you about your characters, or how are you most like Victor or Benji, and how are you most unlike them?
I feel like Benji has a really interesting arc this time around. There's a few things that are touched on with season 1 that get revisited. I'm not sure how much I can say, because no spoilers and all that. But yeah, it was good to be able to get to know Benji a lot more, and, like, all his different complexities and layers, sort of through the lens of his relationship with Victor, really, and see how they progress as a couple. And, like, just that was exciting, because, like, at the end of season 1, I was dying to know, like, how these characters were gonna, just how their relationship was gonna be. So it was really fun getting to play that out and to kind of have someone like Michael to do those scenes with too, because I feel like Michael's a very, like, committed actor and very sort of, dedicated in the moment. And there was just so many highlights of filming those scenes, and those intimacy scenes. They were really, like, those intimate scenes were, like, some of the highlights for me, as an actor, at least, like, from my perspective. Yeah.
I think that, like, this season, I think what surprised me is how much strength Victor gains, like in like how much ownership he takes over being like a gay man. And I love how we kind of explore more this season Victor's ownership of being a gay man and what it means to him, and what being gay means to him and what it means to the rest of the world around him. And I think that that's like a really fun kind of like, it's a really important thing that I feel like isn't necessarily depicted all the time, especially in like movies and television. It's like, all right, I came out and now this is it. This is what we're doing now, you know, but I feel like this is cool because we kind of go through the steps of those struggling of like, you know, his peers maybe not necessarily being the most accepting, or, you know, him kind of like his family not being accepting, but his boyfriend being like that mentor and that like ultimate understanding person. And I think that is a really fun aspect to explore.
Any last thing, we're almost out of time. Any last thing you'd like to share, James or Anna, any of you with the audience, with the OutFest audience?
I just want to say to the audience, you know, thanks for being with us this whole journey. It's been so cool. And I think, you know, similarly to my experience on Betty, the fans are so invested and so it feels so personal, and it feels this, you know, that you don't have these kinds of experiences a lot, at least in my experience with fans, where they are so invested personally, and they really are. But it's enjoyable, and it's you know, it's exciting. But just to have that sort of interaction again, like it's just wonderful, and I just think our fans are like outrageous and cool, and you know, of course, they're super hot and gorgeous.
I would say, you know, I have been a fan and supported OutFest over the years. And one thing that is super interesting to me, this is a community of people making and appreciating queer content. Some of the critiques that we sometimes get about the show are like, oh, Victor should have been bi, or should have been this, or I never see a story of this. Why did you choose to make it this? And the answer is, we're telling one story here, right? We can't tell every person's story, but what it speaks to for me is that there's such a hunger for this kind of content. There's such a lack of it that the members of this community, the Outfester community, are doing that. You're putting it out there. You're making these stories. You're telling, so like, yes, please make more of this content. Tell different stories. And so that our community, LGBT community, doesn't have to, you know, have everything told in one story. We'll have thousands of these kind of stories that are becoming increasingly mainstream, thank God. And people will begin to see themselves represented on TV and in film. I love that this is proliferating and growing. And we owe a thanks to all these wonderful filmmakers and creators who are doing that right now.
I'd like to say something for my non-English viewers. Lo que yo he aprendido a través de Love Victor y como padre es que no es solamente importante criar a sus hijos para que se respeten y se quieran, pero también para que respetan y quieran a los demás, para de pronto crear un poco más de armonía para la próxima generación.
Qué lindo mensaje. Muchas gracias, James. ¿Anyone else? ¿Alguien más quiere decir algo en español o en inglés?
What James said. I second that. Yeah.
Google it.
We would translate it right now, yeah.
Hey, Google it. Okay.
Well, a la audiencia, to the audience, thank you for being with us. Please watch Love Victor, and then also talk about it, share it on social media, let people know what an awesome show it is. Thank you so much to you all for the work you do, for being here today with us. You're all lovely. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Un abrazo grande a todos.
Love you guys. Miss you guys.
I miss you more, woman.
Love ya.